The room was cold, sterile. The faint hum of a flickering fluorescent light buzzed above me, and the metallic tang of blood still clung to the air. My wrists ached against the cuffs, the cold steel biting into my skin every time I shifted in the chair. On the table in front of me sat a tablet. Its screen glowed dimly, casting an eerie light on the otherwise dark interrogation room. I kept my eyes on it, though every fiber of my being screamed at me to look away. A man walked in, his footsteps slow and deliberate, the soles of his boots echoing off the concrete walls. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore an expression that said he'd seen this 100 times before. "Care to explain this?" he asked, sliding the tablet closer to me. The screen played a video. My breath caught as I watched. It was me, or at least it looked like me. The grainy footage showed someone holding a knife, standing over a crumpled body in a dark alley. Blood pooled around the victim as the figure leaned closer, the blade glinting in the dim light. I watched in horror as the figure turned toward the camera, and there it was, my face. I shook my head violently. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not me. It's a perfect match," the man said, his tone flat and unyielding. Face, voice, even the Neuralink signature. Everything checks out. Neuralink. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. "No," I said louder, my voice trembling. "That's impossible. Neuralink can't be hacked. It's encrypted, unhackable," the man finished for me, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's what they said, isn't it?" He leaned forward, his dark eyes narrowing. "So tell me, how does an unhackable system put you at the scene of a murder you claim you didn't commit?" I couldn't answer him. My mind was spinning, trying to grasp at any explanation, but nothing made sense. Neuralink was supposed to be foolproof, a seamless integration of human thought and technology, designed to enhance our lives. It wasn't just a tool, it was a part of me, and yet here it was betraying me. "I wasn't there," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was home, alone." "Convenient," the man replied, leaning back in his chair. He folded his arms, his eyes boring into me. "No witnesses, no alibi, just a video of you committing murder. And you want me to believe it's all a mistake?" "Yes," I said, though the words sounded hollow even to me. He didn't respond. Instead, he reached out and tapped the tablet, replaying the footage. My stomach churned as I watched it again. The familiar way the figure moved, the sound of their voice as they whispered something to the dying man. "This is your end," the figure said, their tone cold and final. It wasn't me. I knew it wasn't. But as I stared at the screen, doubt began to creep in. What if I didn't remember? The man must have seen the flicker of uncertainty in my eyes, because he smirked. "Maybe you don't remember," he said. "Or maybe you don't want to." "I didn't do this," I snapped, anger bubbling to the surface. "Someone's framing me. They must have hacked the Neuralink." He cut me off with a laugh. "Hacked the Neuralink?" He shook his head. "You know how ridiculous that sounds? Neuralink is the most secure technology on the planet. Even if someone could hack it, why target you?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. He was right. Why me? What reason would anyone have to do this? The door opened suddenly, and a new man walked in. He was dressed in a sleek gray suit, his movements calculated and precise. He carried himself with the air of someone who was used to being in control. "My name is Agent Roth," he said, his voice smooth and professional. "I'm with Neuralink's Internal Security Division. I'll be taking over this investigation." The officer who'd been grilling me nodded and left without another word. Roth took a seat across from me, placing a slim folder on the table. He opened it, revealing pages of data, Neuralink logs, timestamps, technical readouts. "It's rare," Roth said, his eyes scanning the folder. "But not impossible." "What's rare?" I asked, my voice cracking. "For someone to hack a Neuralink," he replied, glancing up at me. "It's happened before." A handful of cases, buried deep enough that most people don't know about them. But this is different. How? I demanded. Roth slid one of the pages across the table. It was a Neuralink activity log from the night of the murder. I recognized the timestamp immediately, 11:42 p.m. The log showed a spike in activity, followed by a chilling note, "Override activated." My eyes were glued to the words on the paper. "Override activated." The letters seemed to pulse with an almost malevolent energy, each one hammering home the impossible reality of my situation. "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice low and shaky. Roth leaned back in his chair, his calm demeanor unnerving. "An override," he began, "is a backdoor protocol. It allows an external system to temporarily take control of a Neuralink device. Officially, it's only accessible to Neuralink engineers or law enforcement in life-threatening emergencies. But this," he trailed off, tapping the page with his finger. "But what?" I pressed, my anxiety mounting. "This activity doesn't match the official override parameters," Roth continued. "It's not logged in our system, which means it wasn't authorized." My stomach dropped. "So, someone hacked it? Someone made me do that?" "Possibly," Roth said, though he didn't sound convinced. "But the override isn't just about control. It's invasive. It rewrites neural pathways. If this was a hack, they didn't just make you commit a crime. They made you believe you did it." I froze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Roth said, his voice dropping to a grave tone, "that someone could be altering your memories. You might not know what's real anymore." The words hit me like a freight train. Memories? Altered? How could that even be possible? Neuralink was supposed to be a tool, a bridge between thought and technology. It wasn't supposed to touch the core of who I was. But as Roth spoke, his words seeped into the cracks in my confidence, planting seeds of doubt. "This override wasn't just for the murder," he continued. "There are signs it's been active for weeks, maybe longer." "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice trembling. "That everything I remember could be a lie?" Roth didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid another document across the table. It was a transcript of Neuralink's activity logs over the past month. The entries were filled with strange phrases. "Memory write initiated," "emotion augmentation active," "cognitive pathway adjustment." I stared at the paper, my chest tightening. None of it made sense, and yet the implication was clear. The next few hours were a blur. Roth questioned me relentlessly, his tone alternating between clinical and accusatory. He wanted to know about my daily routine, my relationships, my habits, anything that might provide a clue as to why I was targeted. But the more he asked, the less certain I became of my own answers. "What time do you leave for work?" 8. "No, wait. 8:30. Are you sure?" "Yes. No. I think so." My frustration boiled over, spilling into panic. "What are you trying to do?" I shouted. "Make me think I did it? Is that it?" "No one's trying to make you think anything," Roth said evenly. "We're trying to figure out what's been done to you." I slumped back in my chair, exhausted and defeated. My thoughts felt tangled, like a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. Was this how it started? Was this how they got to me? "Think back," Roth said, his voice softer now. "Has anything unusual happened recently? An odd interaction? A strange feeling? Anything that stands out?" I racked my brain, combing through the haze of my memories. First, nothing came to mind. But then, a moment surfaced, small, almost insignificant. But now it felt like a glaring red flag. "There was a message," I said slowly, my words hesitant, "on my Neuralink display. A week ago. It said, 'System calibration required.'" Roth's eyes narrowed. "And what did you do?" I let it run," I admitted. "It looked official. I thought it was just a routine update." Roth cursed under his breath. "That wasn't from us," he said grimly. A cold wave of fear washed over me. "Then who was it from?" Roth didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone. typing furiously before sliding it into his pocket. "We need to get you out of here," he said abruptly, standing up. "What?" I asked, alarmed. "Why?" "If someone hacked your Neuralink," he explained, his voice low and urgent, "they could still have access. This building isn't secure. We need to move you somewhere safe." I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me not to trust him. But what choice did I have? The evidence was stacked against me, and Roth was the only one offering even a glimmer of hope. "Fine," I said finally. Roth nodded and motioned for me to follow him. As we left the interrogation room, the weight of what he'd said hung heavy in the air. My memories, my thoughts, my very sense of self. None of it was safe anymore, and somewhere someone was pulling the strings. Roth led me through the police station, his pace brisk and purposeful. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. Every step felt like a countdown to something I couldn't predict. "You're saying someone still has access to my Neuralink?" I asked, struggling to keep up. "Yes," Roth replied, not bothering to look back. "And if they can manipulate your memories, they can manipulate you. We need to isolate your Neuralink before they do anything worse." "Worse?" The word came out in a shaky whisper. Roth didn't answer. His silence said more than words ever could. We exited through a side door, stepping into the cool night air. A black sedan was waiting for us, its engine idling softly. Roth opened the back door and motioned for me to get in. As I slid into the seat, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, half expecting another damning notification. Instead, it was a video suggestion. "Are you enjoying this story? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. You won't want to miss what happens next." My blood ran cold. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, showing Roth the screen. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's probably unrelated," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The sedan pulled away, its tires crunching softly on the gravel. The city blurred past the window as we drove, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me. The ride was silent, save for the low hum of the car's engine. Roth sat beside me, typing furiously on his phone. I wanted to ask where we were going, but the fear lodged in my throat made it impossible to speak. When we finally stopped, I realized we were outside a nondescript office building. It looked abandoned, its windows dark and lifeless. "This is where we'll run the diagnostics," Roth said, stepping out of the car. "Follow me." I hesitated. Something about the building felt wrong, too quiet, too isolated. But before I could voice my concerns, Roth was already heading inside. The interior was just as unsettling as the exterior. The air was thick with the smell of dust and old electronics, and the faint hum of machines filled the space. Roth led me to a room in the back, where a single chair sat beneath a tangle of wires and monitors. "Sit," he instructed, gesturing to the chair. "What is this place?" I asked, eyeing the equipment warily. "It's a secure lab," Roth said. "We'll scan your Neuralink here, isolate the intrusion, and remove it." I sat down reluctantly, the cold metal of the chair sending a shiver through me. Roth connected a cable to the port at the base of my skull, and the monitors sprang to life. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the screen filled with a cascade of data, lines of code, neural patterns, and fragments of memory. "There it is," Roth muttered, pointing to a section of the screen. "What?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "The override signal," he said. "It's embedded deep in your Neuralink system. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to frame you. They wanted complete control." I felt the blood drain from my face. Control? For what? Roth didn't answer. Instead, he frowned at the screen, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The monitors flickered, and suddenly, a video began to play. It was me again, or at least it looked like me. This time, I was standing in a crowded street, shouting into a megaphone. People around me were screaming, pushing, running. The scene was chaos. "What is this?" I whispered. "A memory fragment," Roth said. "Or a manufactured one. It's hard to tell." The figure on the screen turned toward the camera, and I felt my stomach churn. There was something wrong with his eyes, hollow, lifeless. as if he were a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. And then the screen went dark. "Someone knows we're here," Roth said, his voice tense. "What does that mean?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "It means," Roth said, unplugging the cable from my Neuralink, "we need to leave. Now." The second we stepped outside, I knew something was wrong. The street, empty when we'd arrived, was now teeming with people. They stood motionless, faces obscured by shadows, their silhouettes lit by the glow of streetlights. "Who are they?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my chest. Roth grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the sedan. "They're not here to talk." The figures began to move as one, their heads snapping toward us in eerie synchronization. My pulse spiked as they started walking, their pace slow but deliberate. "Get in the car," Roth ordered, shoving me toward the door. Before I could move, my phone buzzed again. Another notification. "They're closer than you think. Watch your back." I froze, my hands trembling as I stared at the screen. Roth yanked it out of my hand and glanced at it. His face darkened. "They're in your Neuralink," he said. "They're watching everything you see." The car screeched onto the road, Roth gripping the wheel tightly as he weaved through the city streets. My head felt like it was splitting in two, the weight of his words pressing down on me. "How do we stop this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Roth didn't answer immediately. He kept his eyes on the road, his jaw clenched. "We need to destroy your Neuralink," he said finally. "Destroy it?" I echoed, panic rising in my voice. "Is that even possible?" "It's the only way to sever their connection," Roth said. "But once it's gone, your memories might never recover. You'll lose everything tied to the implant." I leaned back in my seat, my mind racing. Everything tied to the implant? That was my entire life. My work, my relationships, even my childhood memories. Could I really give all of that up? Before I could answer, the car slammed to a halt. "What the hell?" Roth muttered, his eyes narrowing at the dashboard. The screen was flashing red, an error message scrolling rapidly across it. "Manual override initiated. System locked." And then the doors unlocked. The doors swung open, and the figures from the street were there, their faces now illuminated by the car's interior light. Their eyes were blank, their expressions empty. "What do they want?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "They want you," Roth said, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a small device. "We don't have much time." "What is that?" I asked, eyeing the device nervously. "A Neuralink disruptor," he said. "It'll fry your implant, but we have to do it here and now." The figures began to close in, their movements jerky and unnatural. My hands shook as Roth held the disruptor up to the port at the base of my skull. "This is going to hurt," he warned. Before I could respond, a piercing pain shot through my head. It felt like my brain was being torn apart, every neuron firing at once. I screamed, the sound echoing in the confined space of the car, and then everything went dark. When I woke up, the car was gone. The street was empty, the figures nowhere to be seen. Roth was leaning over me, his face pale and drawn. "It's done," he said simply. I reached up, my hand brushing against the back of my neck. The Neuralink port was still there, but it felt different. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Roth helped me to my feet, his expression grim. "Now you rebuild," he said. "Without the implant, without their influence." As we walked away, my phone buzzed one last time. I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach as I unlocked the screen. The notification was simple. "This isn't over." It started with the message. I was halfway through my coffee, the morning routine playing out like clockwork. News scrolling on my Neuralink interface, the subtle hum of my smart home syncing with my thoughts. Then the notification came, its bold text floating in the corner of my vision. "Pre-crime alert. Potential aggressor identified. Report for processing." For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Potential aggressor? Me? My heart skipped as I tapped the notification, bringing up the details. The display expanded, revealing my name, my ID, and a series of timestamps for events that hadn't even happened yet. 11:42 a.m. Location: Public Plaza. Incident: assault with a deadly weapon. What the hell? I muttered, nearly dropping my mug. The world around me seemed to blur as I scrolled through the report. It was detailed, alarmingly so. A weapon, description unknown. A victim, identity pending. But the outcome was clear. I was going to attack someone today. Except I wasn't. The buzz of the Neuralink's AI interrupted my thoughts. You are required to report to the local pre-crime division by 10 a.m. for questioning. I froze. My mind reeled, panic rising like a tide. This had to be a glitch, right? Neuralink was supposed to predict crimes before they happened, analyzing behavioral patterns, environmental factors, and neurological activity. But I wasn't violent. I wasn't capable of hurting anyone. Still, the directive loomed. Ignoring it wasn't an option. The penalties for non-compliance were harsh: mandatory detainment, full Neuralink shutdown, or worse. I had 2 hours to prove my innocence before the world decided I was guilty. The pre-crime division building was a monolith of steel and glass, its stark architecture casting long shadows on the street. As I approached, the Neuralink system buzzed again, syncing with the building's network. Welcome. Please proceed to room 214 for evaluation. The air inside was cold, sterile. A receptionist waved me through without a word, her eyes darting briefly to the glowing mark on my Neuralink that identified me as under review. Felt like everyone in the room was watching me. Room 214 was even colder, the walls lined with monitors displaying scrolling lines of data. My data. My heart pounded as a man in a gray suit entered, his sharp features illuminated by the screens. "Mr. Turner," he said, extending a hand. "Agent Collins, I'll be conducting your evaluation." I shook his hand, my grip weak. "This is a mistake," I blurted out. "I'm not violent. I don't know why the system flagged me, but I'd never hurt anyone." Collins offered a thin smile, more perfunctory than reassuring. "Let's find out, shall we?" He motioned for me to sit in the chair at the center of the room. As I complied, he connected a cable to the Neuralink port at the base of my skull. A sharp twinge ran through my head as the monitors lit up with my neural patterns. "For the record," Collins began, "do you deny the pre-crime division's prediction of your involvement in an assault today?" "Of course I deny it," I snapped. "I don't even own a weapon." Collins nodded, tapping at his tablet. The monitors shifted, displaying a 3D model of my brain activity. A section of the display pulsed red, drawing his attention. "Interesting," he murmured. "What's interesting?" I demanded. "This spike here," he said, pointing to the screen. "It indicates elevated aggression levels. Coupled with your recent Neuralink search history, it paints a concerning picture." I frowned. "Search history? What are you talking about?" Collins swiped across his tablet, pulling up a list of queries I didn't recognize. How to disarm someone, anatomy of the human neck, optimal striking points. My stomach churned. "I didn't search for any of that," I said, my voice shaking. Collins raised an eyebrow. "Neuralink logs don't lie, Mr. Turner." "But I didn't do it," I insisted. "Someone's tampered with my Neuralink." Collins leaned back, studying me intently. "If that's true, we'll find out. But until then, the system's prediction remains valid. You're scheduled for detainment until the incident time has passed." "No," I said, panic setting in. "You can't do this. I haven't done anything." Collins' expression hardened. "If you truly believe that, you'll have nothing to worry about." "Guards!" The door opened, and 2 officers entered, their movements sharp and precise. "Please cooperate, Mr. Turner," Collins said. "Resistance will only make things worse." As they approached, a single thought consumed me. Someone was framing me, and they were winning. The cell was small, barren. A narrow cot lined one wall, while a glowing red camera watched my every move from the ceiling. I paced the room, my mind racing. How had this happened? Neuralink was supposed to protect us from crime, not ruin innocent lives. My fingers brushed the port at the back of my neck, the subtle heat of the Neuralink unit reminding me of its presence. I couldn't escape it. Not physically, not mentally. A sharp buzz interrupted my thoughts, and the wall monitor flickered on. Colin's face appeared, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Turner," he began, "I have an update regarding your case." I stepped closer, my chest tightening. "Did you find something? Proof that I didn't do it?" Collins tilted his head slightly. "Not exactly. We've received additional data that strengthens the system's prediction." The screen shifted to display a new set of logs, locations, timestamps, and another spike in neural activity. But what caught my attention was the footage. It showed me leaving my apartment this morning. A cold, detached expression on my face. In my hand was a knife. I staggered back, shaking my head. "That's not me," I whispered. "The camera logs say otherwise," Collins replied. "You were recorded entering a shop an hour later and purchasing a weapon matching the predicted description." "I didn't do that," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I was at home." Collins didn't flinch. "Perhaps your memory's been compromised." The thought hit me like a blow. Neuralink system wasn't just predicting crimes, it was altering perceptions. "Can't you see this is a setup?" Pleaded. "Someone's hacking the system, manipulating it." Collins frowned, his gaze narrowing. "And who would do that, Mr. Turner? Neuralink is unhackable." I was about to argue when the lights flickered, plunging the cell into darkness. The screen went black, and the faint hum of electricity disappeared. "Mr. Turner?" Colin's voice crackled through the speakers, laced with static. The door unlocked with a soft click. I hesitated, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Run." The voice wasn't Colin's. Came from my Neuralink. I bolted. My feet pounded against the cold floor as I darted down the dimly lit hallway. Alarms blared around me, red lights flashing ominously. "Stop immediately," a robotic voice ordered, but I didn't look back. Whoever or whatever had unlocked that door didn't want me to stay. The Neuralink buzzed in my head, the voice returning. "Keep moving. They're coming for you." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "A friend," it replied. "If you want to survive, do exactly as I say." Against my better judgment, I listened. The voice guided me through a maze of corridors, each turn more disorienting than the last. I passed rooms filled with glowing monitors, their screens displaying profiles of other flagged individuals. How many lives had this system destroyed? Finally, I reached a server room, its massive machines humming faintly. "This is the source," the voice said. "Destroy it." I hesitated, staring at the rows of servers. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, the monitors flickered, displaying images of me. Moments from my life that felt alien. Me buying a knife. Me walking through the plaza. Me committing the crime. Except the timestamps didn't match. "This is fake," I whispered. "Yes," the voice replied. "The system isn't predicting crimes anymore. It's creating them." My hands shook as I reached for the nearest server. If the system could manipulate me, it could manipulate anyone. I grabbed a heavy object and swung, smashing the first server. Sparks flew, the machines sputtering and groaning. One by one, I destroyed them, each strike fueled by a mix of fear and fury. When it was over, the room fell silent. My Neuralink buzzed one last time. "You've done well," the voice said, "but they'll come for you. Run." The connection severed, and the weight of what I'd done crashed over me. I wasn't free, not yet, but I'd made my move. The dreams started small. At first, they were just fragments, random images flashing in the dark corners of my mind. A woman crying in a dimly lit room, a pair of hands, bloodied and trembling. A shadow standing at the foot of my bed, its face obscured. I told myself it was just stress. Work had been hell lately, and the Neuralink sleep optimization program I'd installed was supposed to help. 8 hours of deep sleep guaranteed, the advertisement had promised. I figured it was just my brain adjusting to the system. But the dreams kept coming. Worse, they didn't feel like mine. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart racing as if I'd just run a marathon. My hands would shake, and sometimes I'd hear whispers echoing in my head. Words I didn't recognize, spoken in a voice that wasn't mine. I I brought it up at my next Neuralink consultation, hoping for some reassurance. Dr. Green, the technician assigned to my case, barely looked up from her tablet. "It's normal," she said dismissively, scrolling through my neural logs. The Dream Sync feature occasionally overlaps with adjacent nodes in the network. Your Neuralink is likely syncing with nearby users during sleep. Syncing with nearby users? I repeated, alarmed. "It's harmless," she said, waving off my concern. "Think of it as static. Background noise your brain processes while you rest. It's part of the adaptive learning process. Harmless. Static." I didn't feel reassured. The next night, I set my Neuralink to manual mode, disabling all dream-related features. I thought that would stop the nightmares. I was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the clarity. The dream wasn't fragmented this time. It was vivid, as if I were living it. I was standing in a darkened room, the walls lined with monitors displaying static. A cold, metallic scent hung in the air. A man sat in a chair at the center of the room, his head slumped forward. His face was obscured by shadows, but I could hear him muttering under his breath. I stepped closer, the floor creaking beneath my feet. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing unnaturally. The man's head snapped up, and I stumbled back in shock. His eyes were blank, his pupils replaced by swirling static. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, his voice distorted. Before I could respond, the monitors flickered, and a voice boomed through the room. "Connection established," the man screamed, his body convulsing violently as the static in his eyes spilled onto the monitors. The screens displayed flashes of images, scenes of chaos, blood, and destruction. My heart pounded as I tried to wake up, but I couldn't. The room began to collapse, the walls crumbling into darkness. The man reached out to me, his fingers brushing against my arm. "Help me," he whispered, his voice desperate. "They're watching us." I jolted awake, gasping for air. My bedroom was quiet, the faint glow of my Neuralink display the only source of light. My arm tingled where the man had touched me, the sensation too real to dismiss. That morning, I checked my Neuralink logs. Most of the data was blank, as if the system hadn't recorded anything. But one line stood out: "Dream connection established. Node 429B. I stared at the screen, a sense of dread settling over me. Node 429B. That wasn't me. Someone else was in my dreams. The next night, I tried to resist sleeping. I stayed up late, pacing my apartment with a cup of stale coffee clutched in my hands. My eyes burned, my thoughts racing. Who was Node 429B? Was it another user or something worse? I checked the Neuralink app again, scrolling through my settings. The Dream Sync feature was still disabled, but the logs from the previous night hadn't been erased. I kept coming back to the same message. Connection established. My mind spiraled. Had someone hacked into my Neuralink? Was I sharing my subconscious with a stranger? Or were they sharing theirs with me? I collapsed onto the couch, my body screaming for rest. Just a few minutes, I told myself. I closed my eyes, reset my thoughts, and get back to work. The moment my eyelids fluttered shut, the dream began. I was standing on a bridge, the night air cold against my skin. The water below churned violently, crashing against the steel beams. Ahead of me, a figure stood at the edge, their back turned. I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the wind. The figure turned slowly, and I froze. It was the man from the previous dream. His eyes were still blank, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him, shadowy figures emerged from the darkness, their forms twisting and shifting like smoke. "They're coming," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally. I tried to run, but the bridge buckled beneath me. The figures moved closer, their faces obscured but their presence overwhelming. "You need to wake up," the man whispered, stepping closer. "They're using you." "What does that mean?" I shouted, my voice trembling. Before he could answer, the figures surged forward, engulfing him in a cloud of black. I felt them grab at me, their cold hands pulling me down into the depths. I screamed as I woke up, my chest heaving. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a new notification lighting up the screen. Like, share, and subscribe to uncover the truth behind the dream hijacker. You won't want to miss what happens next. The message wasn't from Neuralink. It was from the intruder. I knew I couldn't face this alone. The dreams were escalating, and the intrusions were becoming harder to ignore. Someone or something was using my Neuralink as a gateway, and I needed answers. I booked an emergency session with Dr. Green, pacing the waiting room as I tried to piece together what I'd say. When she finally called me in, I wasted no time. "Something's wrong with my Neuralink," I said, my voice taut. "I'm connecting to someone else's dreams. It's not just static anymore. It's something bigger." Dr. Green frowned, tapping at her tablet. "That's impossible," she said. "DreamSync is disabled in your settings. There's no way another user could connect to your Neuralink." "Then how do you explain this?" I asked, shoving my phone toward her. She stared at the logs, her expression hardening. "Node 429B, she murmured. "This shouldn't be here. The system doesn't assign nodes for manual dream mode." "Exactly," I said, my frustration mounting. "So what is it?" Dr. Green hesitated, her fingers hovering over the tablet. "I need to run a diagnostic," she said finally. "But if this is what I think it is, we're dealing with something far more serious than a malfunction." "What do you mean?" "Dream hijacking," she said, her voice low. "It's a black market practice. Hackers use unauthorized Neuralinks to access other users' subconscious minds. It's dangerous and illegal." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Why me?" Dr. Green didn't answer. She connected my Neuralink to her equipment, her brow furrowing as lines of code filled the screen. "There it is," she muttered. "A backdoor program. Someone installed it without your knowledge. It's been active for weeks." My heart sank. "Can you remove it?" "I can try," she said. "But whoever did this isn't going to let you go that easily." As she worked, my phone buzzed again. Another notification lit up the screen. "You're getting too close. Back off or face the consequences." I showed it to Dr. Green, my hands trembling. Her face paled. "This isn't just a hacker," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's an entire network." The room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling. Dr. Green met my gaze, her expression grim. "We shut them down." Dr. Green worked in tense silence, her fingers flying across the keyboard as streams of code raced across the monitor. My head throbbed with every pulse of my Neuralink, a subtle reminder that something foreign was lodged inside my mind. "They're watching us," Dr. Green muttered, her voice taut. "Every move I make, they're countering it. Whoever's behind this, they're not amateurs. Can you get them out?" I asked, my throat dry. Dr. Green paused, her eyes scanning the monitor. "I can isolate the program, but removing it will trigger a failsafe. They'll know we're trying to cut them off." "What happens then?" Her face hardened. "They'll retaliate." I swallowed hard, fear prickling at the back of my neck. "Do it." She nodded and tapped a final command. The monitor flashed red, and my Neuralink buzzed violently. A sharp electric pain shot through my head, and I cried out, clutching the sides of the chair. "Hold on," Dr. Green shouted. "I'm almost there." The pain subsided, replaced by a chilling silence. The monitor dimmed, its display reduced to a single line of text. "Program isolated. Connection severed." I exhaled shakily, relief washing over me. But before I could speak, my phone buzzed again. "You shouldn't have done that." The lights in the room flickered, and the hum of machinery grew louder. Dr. Green's computer screen flashed with distorted images. Faces I didn't recognize, voices overlapping in a cacophony of sound. "They're breaching the system," Dr. Green said, her voice trembling. "They're trying to re-establish control." "What do we do?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. She turned to me, her eyes wide. "We end this, but you'll need to trust me." Dr. Green handed me a device, a small, black cube with a single blinking light. "This is a neural disruptor," she explained. "It'll wipe your Neuralink completely. No backdoors, no programs, no memories tied to the system. It's the only way to stop them from accessing your mind. I stared at the device, my hands trembling. You mean I'll lose everything? She nodded grimly. Your Neuralink stores everything. Contacts, memories, even subconscious thoughts. Once it's gone, there's no getting it back. But if we don't do this, they'll use you to get to others. This won't stop with you. The weight of her words settled over me like a shroud. My entire life was tied to Neuralink. The thought of losing it felt like losing myself. But the alternative was unthinkable. Do it, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Green placed the disruptor against the port at the base of my skull. This is going to hurt, she warned. The moment she activated the device, pain exploded in my head. It was as if every neuron was firing at once, a white-hot agony that consumed my senses. I screamed, my vision blurring as the room around me seemed to dissolve. Through the haze of pain, I heard the voice again. This isn't over. And then, everything went dark. I woke up in a hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling the air. My head ached, but the constant buzz of the Neuralink was gone. Dr. Green sat by my side, her expression tired but relieved. It's done, she said. The disruptor worked. The back door is gone, and so is your Neuralink. I touched the back of my neck, feeling the faint scar where the device had been. Felt strange, like a phantom limb. What happens now? I asked. Dr. Green hesitated. You rebuild, she said, but be careful. The network that targeted you, they're still out there, and they'll be looking for another host. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Even without Neuralink, I didn't feel free. The memories of the dreams, the whispers, the shadowy figures, they lingered, etched into my mind. As I left the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and my heart skipped a beat. The screen displayed a single message: dreams never die. I stared at the words, my hands trembling. I had destroyed the Neuralink, severed the connection. But the nightmares weren't over.